Have you ever had one of those mornings where you wake up expecting a perfectly normal day, only for complete chaos to crash right into your life? That's exactly what happened to me when a loud, thunderous bang shook the ground outside my house, a sound so sharp it made my heart jump. I bolted outside and froze in sheer disbelief. There, strewn across the gravel, was my wooden fence, shattered into splinters, as if a wrecking ball had slammed into it. And smack in the middle of the destruction sat a dented silver car, its bumper jammed deep into what had once been a sturdy fence post. The driver's door flew open, and out stumbled none other than Karen's teenage son, Brad. Now, Karen was already notorious around the neighborhood for her entitlement, always complaining, always convinced the world owed her something. And Brad, well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Are you kidding me? I yelled, my eyes darting between the wrecked fence and the skid marks tearing up my lawn. Brad ran a hand through his messy hair, being more annoyed than guilty. Hey, relax, man. It's not that bad, he said casually. Not that bad? I snapped. You just drove through my fence. Before I could even process the destruction, a sharp, familiar voice cut through the air. Karen herself stormed over, arms crossed, face flushed, ready for battle. What did you do to my son? She barked, glaring at me as though I had plowed into my own property. I blinked. Excuse me. He destroyed my fence, but logic had no place here. Your fence. It was too close to the road. If you hadn't built it there, my son wouldn't have crashed. This is on you, she declared, as if property lines and common sense didn't exist. I nearly laughed out loud. Too close to the road? My fence had been standing in the exact same spot for 15 years, well within my property. But before I could even respond, Karen whipped out her phone and called the cops, demanding they arrive immediately. Good, I muttered under my breath. Let's see what they have to say. While we waited, Brad leaned against the crumpled hood of his car, scrolling on his phone as if nothing had happened. Karen paced back and forth, practicing her complaints out loud. And me? I muttered, staring at the wreckage, trying to grasp just how far she would push this. I didn't have long to wonder. When the flashing lights finally pulled up, Karen dashed toward the officers, pointing at me as if I were the criminal. And that's when the real showdown began. The officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts, scanning the scene with trained eyes. One looked at the mangled car nose deep in my yard, the other at the broken wood, scattered like kindling across the grass. Before they could ask a single question, Karen leapt in. Officers, thank God you're here, she cried, clutching her son's arm dramatically. This man is responsible for this accident. His fence is practically a trap, built way too close to the road, and my son nearly died because of it. I almost choked on the absurdity. A trap? It's a fence on my property that stood there for over a decade without a single problem. The officers exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed. Officer Daniels motioned toward the tire marks, gouging my lawn. Ma'am, looks like your son lost control before he hit the fence. Can you explain what happened? Brad, still glued to his phone, finally muttered. I was just driving. This guy's fence came out of nowhere. Like, who builds a fence there? He gestured lazily, as if the ridiculous claim excused plowing through private property. Karen nodded furiously. Exactly. And he needs to pay for the damages to my son's car. You hear that? She pointed at me, eyes blazing. He should pay. I laughed outright, which only made her red face flare brighter. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. Your son crashes through my fence, and I'm supposed to pay for his car? Officer Daniels raised a hand, cutting through the tension. All right, let's calm down. Ma'am, property lines are clear. This fence is well within his yard. There's no law against it being here. Karen's jaw dropped. So what? You're taking his side? Her voice shrilled so sharply, drew neighbors peeking from porches and windows. Everyone knew Karen's antics, and now it had become a full-blown spectacle. The second officer, Ramirez, pulled out his notepad. Your son's car is undrivable. It'll need to be towed, and we'll need your insurance information for the property damage. Karen whipped her head toward him. Tow it? No, no, no. You can't tow his car. He needs it. Ma'am, Ramirez said firmly. It's a hazard. It's not going anywhere but the impound lot. For the first time, Brad's phone slipped from his hands. Wait. What? Karen's scream of outrage echoed down the street. Deep down, I knew this was only the opening act of her meltdown. Her face twisted in a mix of rage and desperation. You can't tow his car. He's a good kid. He just made a little mistake. If anyone's at fault here, it's him. She jabbed a finger toward me like she was trying to stab the air. Officer Daniels didn't flinch. Ma'am, your son drove through this man's fence. That makes him lying, not the homeowner. His car is a hazard. It has to be removed. Brad, finally realizing his phone wasn't going to save him, piped up. Mom, do something. They can't take my car. I need it. His voice cracked, a mix of panic and entitlement, the same spoiled tone heard countless times before. Whenever he didn't get his way, Karen spun back toward the officers. Listen, this man purposely put his fence there to cause accidents. I've told the HOA for years that it's dangerous. Why don't you check the records? The crowd of neighbors began murmuring, whispers spreading like wildfire. Old Mrs. Jensen from across the street called out, that fence has been there longer than your son had a license. Heads nodded in agreement. Some even chuckled at the absurdity. I crossed my arms silently, letting the truth speak for itself. For once, the neighborhood was clearly on my side. Officer Ramirez had clearly reached his limit. Ma'am, unless you want to be cited for obstruction, I suggest you step aside and let the tow truck do its job. Karen gasped as though he had threatened her very life. Obstruction? I'm the victim here. But the flashing yellow lights of the tow truck were already rounding the corner, rumbling toward the wreck. Brad's face went pale. He ran to the car, clutching the hood as if sheer force could keep it from being hauled away. No, you can't. This is my car. The tow truck driver stepped out, unimpressed. Kid, you either move, or I move you. Cars are coming with me. A soft ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Karen shrieked again, pacing in frantic circles, her voice cracking under the weight of humiliation. You'll regret this. She screamed at me, as if I had orchestrated the entire scene. I just shook my head. Karen, your son destroyed my fence. I'm not the one in trouble here. The officers began guiding Brad away from the vehicle as the tow driver hooked up the front end. The chains clicked and clamped into place, and the sound was music to my ears. As the car's front wheels lifted, I couldn't help but think this battle was far from over. The tow truck roared, lifting Brad's car fully onto the flatbed. The defiant smirk on his face vanished, replaced with wide-eyed disbelief. Karen, meanwhile, was still clinging to the delusion that she could somehow win. This isn't over, she shouted, storming toward the officers. You can't just take his car away. You should be arresting him. She jabbed her finger at me again, trembling with fury. Officer Daniels sighed, clearly at the end of his patience. Ma'am, I'm only going to say this once. Your son is liable for property damage. The vehicle is being impounded. Your insurance will cover the cost of the fence. If you continue yelling, I'll have no choice but to cite you for disorderly conduct. Do you understand? Karen froze. For a moment, her bravado cracked. The neighbors were still watching, enjoying every second of her downfall. Phones were out, cameras recording. Her humiliation had become a full-blown neighborhood event. Brad buried his face in his hands. Mom, just stop, he muttered. But Karen wasn't ready to surrender. She tried one last desperate move. This man set us up. I'll sue him. I'll sue the city. I'll sue everyone. The tow driver chuckled, shaking his head as he climbed back into his truck. Lady, you can't sue gravity. Your kid just doesn't know how to drive. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and some even clapped. I stood silently, arms crossed, watching justice unfold in real time. For years, Karen had bullied the neighborhood, acting like rules didn't apply to her, and making life miserable for anyone who stood up to her. But now, she was exposed, loud, entitled, and powerless against reality. Officer Ramirez handed me a slip of paper. File this with your insurance company. You'll be reimbursed for the fence. Their policy covers it. Finally, a measure of relief. Thank you, officers, I said, tucking the paper safely in my pocket. Meanwhile, Karen stood trembling, caught between rage and defeat, her son sulking beside her as his beloved car was hauled away. The sound of it leaving was like a victory march. As the officers prepared to leave, Daniels gave me a small nod. "Don't worry, you did nothing wrong here. If she tries anything else, call us." I smiled faintly. "Trust me, I will." When the crowd dispersed and the street fell quiet again, I looked at the broken fence and fresh tire marks in my yard. It would take time to repair, but the memory of Karen's tantrum and the sight of that car disappearing was worth every splinter. So, what do you think? Was Karen completely out of line, or did justice finally win? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more wild neighborhood stories.